curiosity for the time of death just because we want to know what time they were killed? Or is it because then if it's after 7, it shows that Mick and Jack are innocent of the murders? Because they put it down to that phone call between Darren Nichols and Jack saying, "Come and get us." Jack calling Darren. But what if that phone call isn't "come and get us"? Because if you didn't put it down to that phone call being "come and get us," you could then open up the time of death. Because we've got the word of Darren Nichols that phone call is the "come and get us" phone call. But that's the word of a liar. And the word of someone that's been coerced by the police to set that narrative. And that is where they fail. Because the actual timeline of the Range Rover heading towards the lane, it wouldn't have made it there before 7 o'clock. It would have made it there just after 7, but it wouldn't have made it there before 7. It wouldn't have had time to get to the bottom of the lane and to pull up and for Jack to come out the bushes and to shoot the 3. And Mick, obviously. But they wouldn't have time to have done that. The call between Sarah Saunders and Pat Tate didn't take place down the lane. It took place, it was a 4-minute call. If that had started at the top of the lane, they would have reached the gate within 2 minutes. It's not the length of the lane and the rise of the foot soldier. Bearing in mind, beginning at the rise of the foot soldier, the farmers find the Range Rover on the other side of the gate. That's not how it happened. The real farmers drove up behind the Range Rover, which was parked in front of the gate that led to the ponds, the pheasants and the ducks that they were on their way to feed that morning when they discovered a Range Rover. But were they the first to discover it? But that's another question. It doesn't really matter what information, background information, possibly will emerge about the Billy Jasper theory. There will always be the missing 5 hours. Or is there? Because we have the Rettendon Turnpike sighting. But is that legit? Did it really happen with Pat, Tony and Craig? If it did, then they 100% were not dead by 7 o'clock. So if the truth is they really did go down the lane at 7, they left again. Which changes everything about that evening then. It begs so many questions. One being, why they never cancelled the restaurant. Now, fair enough, that might not mean anything in the grand picture of things, because you've got Tony maybe has then, this deal has come about, this offer for this 4K of Coke that they didn't go down the lane with at 7 o'clock. Maybe they were going down there to buy Coke or whatever the situation was. Things changed possibly at 7 o'clock, where Pat ignored the fact that Claire Carey was waiting for him, that Craig Rolfe ignored the fact that Donna Jaggers was waiting to be picked up. She'd bought a dress from Lakeside, if that's to be believed. And then you've got Tony with Donna Garwood or Anna Whitehead. There's confusion because both mentioned they were going. You've got Donna Garwood on Tony Tucker's answer machine waiting to be picked up. I mean, for all we know, it might have been confession night for Tony, but we know that only 6, maybe he's going to introduce them to each other, but we know that there was only 6 seats booked, originally 4, and then 6 later on. But everything changed at some point that evening, if you believe in the Billy Jasper theory. And when they went down the lane, they left again at 7 o'clock to get this 4K of Coke. Maybe it was like a death threat. You're going to get this Coke or you're going to get it. And they knew there was nowhere to run, because whoever had said this, they thought, well, no matter where we go, they're going to find us. Then they panicked and tried to get this Coke thinking that this was going to sort it out. And then in fact it didn't. You know, the farmers found the aftermath of what happened that evening or in the early hours of the morning. But a lot believe, and this is surprising, a lot believe police involvement. A lot believe the scene was set. A lot believe that they were shot outside of the Range Rover. A lot believe that they were shot somewhere else. So you got to add all these up together, and is it at all possible that these people were shot? Is it at all possible that Pat, Tony and Craig were shot somewhere else And you've got these theories like somebody was driving the Range Rover with Craig Wolf on the lap. And I think one of the theories that kind of possibly rings true is, did the Range Rover go beyond the gate at some point? Possibly not when they were murdered, but at some point during that day. What's confusing, and I'll bring this up, is that we now know that Rebecca Carr's statement is possibly wrong because of the time she saw, or who she describes Pat Tate in the back of the Range Rover. And at the time he was calling Claire Kerry from his, it would have been 20 minutes. So just time-wise, it couldn't, there was a video that was released a couple of months ago, which shone light on the fact of, the times didn't match up and Rebecca Carr must be wrong. And described someone else, which is strange because she saw the pictures of Tony and Pat. But what's interesting about that is that she said she saw them with the White Cosworth, which then is part of the mystery of who was in the White Cosworth, and the Range Rover's trying to keep up with it, and this got this mystery. Then you got the Range Rover being seen with a White Cosworth in the morning of the 6th of December at White House Farm, driving in, turning around and going off as if they're looking for the lane. So someone like myself would believe that this is them in the morning, someone in the Cosworth, possibly Bowman, or it's meant to be Nipper to some people, whoever. So you got them there in the morning, and then you've got this sighting by Rebecca Carr. So it all just sounded believable. But then if it's not them, is it them in the morning? Because we do know that Paul Edwards drove a Range Rover according to the CCR 2012 CCRC report. Paul Edwards drove a Range Rover. Paul Edwards was one of the last callers to Pat. I think it was Pat. Jesse Gale drove a Range Rover. And so did John Marshall. John Marshall was found in the back of a Range Rover. He drove a black one. All these people, they could have been the one that was been seen driving down the lane with the grills over it. We're led to believe that possibly the person just got it mixed up and they weren't the grills, but they just assumed that because most Range Rovers have grills that they had. Blue metallic one that the three got found murdered in was had grills on it, but it didn't. So is that them? If it's not, is that the person that's in front of the Range Rover? Because there's space there for the gate to open. Are they in the field? What's this field business about? Is it possible? And this has been put out there a few times from myself and from a crime scene courtroom. Is it possible that they believed there was going to be a drop? Because there was no plane a plane couldn't land in that field, or the weather was not going to. Yeah, but when no one's saying that, that's the part of this bit that always gets lost on people. Knowing is saying there was even going to be a plane. No one was going to. Okay, even if you pretend that there was going to be a plane, no one was going to land. It was going to be a drop. A couple of month before, in November, West Hanningfield, drops from planes. Pat had that idea coming out of prison, or he heard about was West Hanningfield part of it, and it was that's why they chose this field. But either way, there was going to be a drop that night possibly, and that's why Mr. D went and collected it. I've got your parcel. Either way, is it what the three believed? Or had there been an earlier drop? Was there going to be another one? Did the field play some sort of part in this? Or is it just, they just drove up to the gate and somebody did get out for whatever reason? And there was somebody waiting. And it happened just like Nipper described. But we know it weren't no Dean Bochelle in the back of the Range Rover. Goes to the gate to pretend to open it, and then you've got Mr. whoever waiting in the background. Not if this is the Billy Jasper theory. But everybody knows what the Billy Jasper theory is. Mr. D was dropped off. And what you'll hear, you'll get led to believe is that you can't get there from Rectory Lane on foot. Or if you did, it was going to be a mission. It probably is now. Bearing in mind, this is 27 years later, after the fact. A couple of fields over. But no one is saying that you could have got there then as easy. But what we do know is there was pathways, or at least there was a walkway between Rectory Lane And the alternative lane, which is the original workhouse lane, is by name. And so you've got this old route on a map. It's a long way out of where the actual lane is. You've got to come back on yourself, which you can see on the screen now, but still was an old route. So it is possible that someone with a military background, that wants to approach the Range Rover from not the obvious from not the obvious directions, coming down the main lane, which that's who they were possibly waiting for, coming down that main road, going on to, did Tony Tucker fall out of the Range Rover when he was shot? He's got mud on his boots, or did he get out to have a piss? If he got out to have a wee, that means they were waiting there for a little bit. What they're waiting for, who they're waiting for. And if you're waiting for someone that's coming behind you, wouldn't you turn the vehicle around to face them? Because you're going to lead that way anyway. But look how it was found. Craig believes he's going through the gate. If they believed Mr. D was coming from Retro Lane, or they believed the person they were meeting was coming from Retro Lane, are they driving through the field to meet them at the top of the field, which then is nearer to Retro Lane? Or was the bait, kind of like what Billy Blunder in one of his videos, is that there was a carrot dangled? Was that this drop? Because we know there was a meeting between Billy and Pat. Apparently it was the warning. Someone they trusted got them down the lane, or something they trusted. If there was no one with them in the back of the Range Rover, something got them down the lane. Possibly this deal, or a drop. If you believe in the Billy Jasper theory, you're going to believe it's for 4K of coke. You're going to believe they were down there to meet somebody to sell them this coke. And whether they believed it was Mr. D turning up or not, Mr. D did turn up, and then he opened the back door, or the back door possibly was open, I don't know, but he opened the back door and then shot them, killed them. And so information will come out over the next couple of months, which is about the Billy Jasper theory. Obviously, you've got this material that hasn't been shown to the public, which is the notes that Billy Jasper did in his cell, describing what took place on that evening, or sorry, should I say the early hours, and audio of Billy Jasper being interviewed, which we've heard dribs and drabs over the last few months. Not long after the documentary, the whole thing should probably be released. Transcripts of the audio as well, so it is very detailed and it's believable, but you always have this niggling feeling at the back of your head which is going, well, where were they for 5 hours? And how did the police manage to do that? How did the police manage to cover up 5 hours of this lot of lives? Didn't chase up the pub sightings. The Turnpike sighting didn't come along till 11 years later. So in a way, you could think of it like two alternative timelines. You've got the one where they were killed earlier in the evening, whether you believe it was Mick and Jack or not. You could believe it was someone else, but you've still got them getting killed early, and then that explains the non-cancellation of the restaurant booking, no phone calls to the girlfriends, and the fact of they sat there from 7 p.m. murdered, undiscovered until 8 a.m. the next morning by the farmers. That could be the truth right there. And that is what a lot of people have been led to believe all these years, obviously with Mick and Jack being the shooters. But that's what's been put out there, that they were killed just before 7 p.m. Nobody walked down the lane that evening at any point, and they were found at 8 a.m. by Peter Fearbold and Ken Jiggins in the morning. Or is it the fact of they weren't killed at that time and they were killed later? Because if you say, okay, right, they were killed at 7 o'clock. Okay, fair enough. Then ask yourself this. What did Stephen Rogers hear at 12:30 that evening with the fusillade of shots? A lot are going to say that's them getting killed right there. 12:30. And it's just been covered up. There was one in the pub. They could have been sat around someone's house. I believe they were taken to a barn and beaten or drugged. What would make sense if they were drugged, sitting there, to be taken out so easy with no one moving? Acid, LSD, sitting there tripping. The fourth passenger passed something round that was laced. They're sitting there, they're off their heads, tripping. Paula Lannis must have had a rough guess to herself, even if she wasn't asked by the police to estimate a time, which was very strange. Possibly because they just didn't care. But it was never noted down for whatever reason. And the mushrooms, unfortunately, didn't help us in the end. Peter Fairbold always believed that the Range Rover hadn't been there overnight because of no snow and ice on it. And it always comes back to were the trees the reason why, and the body heat from the free. Or was it because it had only been there for less than 8 hours? But I truly do believe whatever will come out about the Jasper theory, however convincing it may be, unless people believe in the turnpike sighting and the pub sightings, and that were definitely after 7, then people will never really believe in the Billy Jasper theory. That also begs the question, who's in the white van coming out the lane and nearly hitting traffic at 7:50? Because that does honestly sound like that's the shooter, or that's someone that's come across the 3 in the Range Rover, possibly the person they were meant to meet. Can't you imagine if they're really meant to meet someone down the lane? Someone gets wind of the meet, gets there first, takes them out, the person then comes to meet them. Possibly, is that Darren Nichols in his white van, going to have a look at the carnage? And then he sees it, and he panics. Is that his training print that was left at the scene when he knelt through the door to have a look at Pat? How involved was Darren Nichols in the shootings? Was he really just a getaway driver sitting at Meadow Road waiting for the call from Jack? Because it just doesn't sound believable. His story just doesn't sound believable with his 28 changes to his statement. So what you have then is someone that knows of what went down that night, possibly second-hand information, and he's changed the names of the shooters. How involved was Darren Nichols? We know he didn't have a good relationship with Pat Tate, but at the time, nor did Mick Steele. But are we to believe that Jack Wimes, who didn't really know Tony Tucker at all, or Craig Rolfe, and only met Pat in prison, shot all 3 because of what Mick said to him? Jack Wimes was in the area, but was Michael Steele? His alibi, of course, that he was at home eating sausage rolls and drinking champagne. Was Michael Steele pretending to be flying an aircraft that evening? And the fake drop, who was pretending to fly that evening? Was there really a drop? Mr. D, if to be believed, came back with a package, with a parcel. So there was 4K's worth of coke from somewhere, and the 3 had got it that evening. Or were they killed earlier and Mr. D was sent in there to collect or what the 3 had and the shooter didn't take? All just possible theories. At the moment, there doesn't seem to be as much belief in the Jasper theory as there should be, really. But I truly believe with what's going to come out over the next few months, the belief will grow. But there always will be the question, what happened to the missing hours of Pat, Tony and Craig? And I'll see you probably the next time when I'm in the bath chatting about the Essex Boys case. Take care.